You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Let's get spooky. This is our station Boo, where we explore the dark and mysterious corners of the world of horror, and we know that you are dying to listen.
And welcome to the Spooky and Kooky podcast of Earth Station Boo, where we talk all things horror. Introducing our haunted host with the most emos, we have lovely Lisa.
Hello, groovy ghoulies.
We have our kick-ass Karen.
What up, my horrorholics?
I am your spooky Shannon, and today we are with one of our besties, Miss Beth.
Hey, y'all.
And we are going to be talking about not only the book, Bram Stoker's Dracula, but we will also be talking about Coppola's adaptation to the film. So let's get spooky.
Hey horrorholics, it's time for the Ghastly Report. Stay tuned for all the fun, spine-tingling news happening in horror today, from new releases to spooky events and so much more.
Hey horrorholics, it's Shannon. Earth Station Boo has just launched its brand new merch store. It's time to get your hands on some killer gear. From our fun logo shirts, cozy hoodies, Let's Get Spooky stickers, and Horrorholics Anonymous totes, there's something for every one of our lovely little ghouls. We offer our spooky designs on many different types of products to fit your desires. But if you happen to see a missed opportunity, just let us know. And unlike most of Stephen King's adaptations, you know what I'm talking about, you won't be disappointed with the quality of the products. Head over to our link tree in our bio, grab your merch, show off your favorite horror podcast, and most of all, let's get spooky.
All right, it's the Ghastly Report. So we have a bunch of fun things to kind of chit-chat about. Lisa, what are your two fun pieces of news that you've got?
My two fun pieces of news are, I'm kind of a little cringy about this, but Ryan Gosling is producing the Amazon's reboot of Killer Clowns in Outer Space. That's a movie to my heart, so I'm really hoping it's going to go well. And then Ruby Maudline, sorry about that mispronunciation, is going to join in the Silent Night, Deadly Night reboot, which ought to be interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about these, but I'm looking forward to seeing what they make.
Yeah.
I'm not.
I think she's going to be great because I've loved her in a few of the other things she's been in, but I'm very much of the why are we rebooting it? Can we please stop rebooting?
Yeah.
That would be lovely.
Yeah, I'm really nervous about the Killer Clowns from Outer Space, though, because that's from my childhood. So I'm kind of cringing about it a little bit.
Totally understand.
I would like to see a reboot of the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes before the Killer Clowns, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or how about...
I want to see what our effects would do, you know?
Or how about the Creeping Terror? Let's actually make a good version of it.
Hey, they made a reboot of Plan 9, okay? And I saw it. And I was like, I like the original better.
Aaron, what about you? What fun horror news do you got?
So, Michael B. Jordan is starring in an R-rated vampire thriller called Sinners, and it's coming out on the 18th.
Yes, it is.
And, Michael B. Jordan with his abs.
He is a very, very good looking man.
He is. And so, I want to see that. There was a film festival in Iceland. They held a tribute and displayed a bust in honor of the late David Lynch.
Yeah.
People often miss the humanity in David Lynch's work. They jump to surrealism. And I'm going to miss him. I really am. I mean, my first introduction to David Lynch was Twin Peaks.
Mine was Eraserhead.
Mine was Eraserhead. But then closely followed by Twin Peaks, which I didn't know was his until I started watching it. I'm like, this has a similar vibe as Eraserhead. Why? Which if you've seen those things and you don't know David Lynch has been part of both of them, you'd be like, what are you talking about? They're not the same. But there's a tone. There's a tone. And I saw the tone in both.
As soon as I hear the name, David Lynch, the Twin Peaks, the music goes off in my head.
Yeah.
It's
Right?
iconic.
Yeah. Do you guys want to take a trip to Twin Peaks together?
Yes.
I don't want to die, but okay.
As long as we don't find the Black Lodge, we're fine.
Okay.
Is the handsome Native American man going to be there?
Sure. So some maybe kind of bad news for us who grew up in the 80s and 90s. Warner Brothers has confirmed that on its slate are new, quote unquote new, finger quotes are going like crazy right now, Goonies and Gremlins. I leave them alone. They're fine. Leave them alone.
Actually, I have the friend that's working on the Gremlins, and I've seen some of the stuff. It's going to be darker, so it looks good.
Is it like a sequel or is it like a reboot?
It's more like a sequel, kind of thing, sort of.
Okay, no, if it's a sequel,
I'll take it.
Cool.
That's all I can say about it. But I've seen the creatures, and it's going to be cool.
I mean, the creatures look cool in the first one, like without being in like the movie. Like they would just show them, and it's like, okay, those are cool. But I don't know. I'm very much of the. Do we have to make sequels upon sequels upon sequels, and do we have to do reboots? Can we not come up with anything original anymore?
Not unless we have, people writing new stuff.
I know.
True.
I know. And then last but not least, as of last week, so the 10th, both Black Mirror and The Last of Us have new seasons that are out. Black Mirror you can find on Netflix, and it's got some pretty creepy stuff, including self-driving vehicles and whatnot. And then we have The Last of Us, which is this season 2. It has already been confirmed to have a season 3, which actually I think takes it out of where the game is. I think it's going beyond the game lore now with season 3.
Cool.
I mean, have they come up with more of the game?
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I think they're now going beyond the game.
I mean, that kind of happens. I mean, if you look at The Walking Dead, it kind of outgrew the comic book.
Well, they also started going in directions that the comic book didn't. Kind of like Game of Thrones. Like, there's a ton of things where it's like the physical, like visual media started catching up to the written media. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to go this direction. We're going to try this out. But yeah.
I mean, it happens a lot too with manga and anime. You base a manga anime on a manga, you're like, well, we can either add filler or wait. Filler.
Yep. So that is our Ghastly Report for this week. So go check out our friends on the ESO Network that we're going to play their fun little promo clip of. And let's get into book versus movie Dracula.
In the Cosmic Pizza Podcast, your pizza delivery guys,
Paul, Dan, Sean,
Casey,
discuss literally anything in the universe.
Conspiracy theories, pod racing, general pop culture.
Our top 3 films of the decade, famous people we confuse with each other, and our favourite stand-up comedians.
women in comedy, voice actors, film directors and producers, authors.
We've recast Star Trek and Babylon 5 and created alternate superheroes.
But most of all, we have had so much fun doing it.
Cosmic Pizza Podcast is not about the cosmos, all about pizza.
So that makes sense.
Alrighty, so before we dive in and start comparing these two amazing pieces of work, we're going to kind of just give each their own time by themselves. So that way they can kind of shine on their own without us going, but in the book or but in the movie. It's going to be just, hey, I read the book. Here are my thoughts. So we'll start with the book because it came first. What are your guys' thoughts on this novel, Dracula, as a literary classic? What are your favorite aspects about the book? What did you not like about the book? Beth, you get to go first.
I absolutely love the novel Dracula. I started reading it when I was a teenager. I have read it many, many times since then. And one of the things I like about it is the way Bram Stoker uses the journals and diary entries and phonograph recordings as the storytelling device. And I think one of the other things that I really love about it is that it was written in a time when, typically men were the heroes of the stories. And here we have a book with four very strong male characters, very much archetypes. And yet I think Mina Harker is the true hero of the story. And I love that it's a woman who holds them all together and kind of becomes their person around whom they rally. And so I love that aspect of the book.
Yeah, definitely. Lisa, how about you?
I've always liked this book. I listened to it a little bit more last week, and it was a little bit harder for me this time because of the letters, but I did really enjoy the way he wrote it. And it was great with the archetypes of the four men and everything. And I really did like the fact that, you got Mina in there keeping them all together. Mm-hmm. And just the dynamics of it in general. So I actually, I really enjoyed it listening to it for a second time.
Okay.
The first time I read it, I was like in 8th grade.
Mm-hmm. Karen, how about you?
So I never really had an inkling to read Bram Stoker's Dracula. I mean, because it's like a vampire story. Everyone knows the Dracula story. I mean, but, I started reading it and I realized I cannot focus. So I have to listen to it via audio because of how Stoker breaks up the novel. I mean, I love the idea of using newspaper articles, journal entries, letters, and all that. But for some odd reason, my mind kind of becomes disjointed and will not put it together. So listening to it, it's amazing because I like the voice actor that they have. Because the audio version I had 4 or 5 different voice actors, each portraying, a person. And the fact that you have a female protagonist. Well, actually, there's not really one protagonist. They're kind of all protagonists because most stories you only have one. And there's like 5, 6 of them.
Yeah.
The fact that they did have a female, that Stoker did put a female in there as a protagonist, it says a lot about, who he is as a person and the changing of times during that, era. Because there was not a lot of female protagonists. But, I kind of I kind of like that. I was like, oh, no, you're amazing. I can't type as fast as you. I wish I could. But I can't. With her little stenography and stuff. And I also like the whole fact that, I read your letters, and so I consider you my friend now. That does not happen in real life.
Not anymore.
No, not anymore. I'm like, I could read your text from like a year ago, all the way to now. I'm like, even though I read it, I don't consider you my friend. But they all bonded together and became friends. And I was like, oh, I wish I was kind of like Lucy, having 3 guys running after me. But that was like back in the day, But yeah, this is an enjoyable novel story. And go Mina. Go Mina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think this is one of the most well-balanced stories of that era when it comes to having strong characters, having interesting stories, and just the flow of it all. Mina she's up there for literary heroines, especially, the way that Bram wrote her is very respectful of women, even with like Lucy, who is a little bit more, morally gray for that time period. He wrote them respectfully, and they weren't shamed for being these strong women and women who went after what they wanted. And I love the fact that all of the men respected them because of it. Like, I love how throughout Mina and Van Helsing's time together, he constantly said, I'm constantly learning from her. She's constantly our teacher. And it's like, yes, an old man who gets it. Like
he loves her.
Like he loves her. He was like, no, she's bright. She's thinking in a way I wouldn't have. That's amazing. Like, she deserves the props. And I absolutely love the way that was told. I, as somebody who's neurospicy, can completely understand how the letter portion can derail anyone. Totally understand how it can derail somebody. Because then you're just like, oh my God, am I listening to somebody else's letter? WTF. But but at the same time, the letters were interesting. Like if you read just the one letter by itself, you would be like, ooh, what is going on? Like you're intrigued by each letter. But listening to like letter after letter after letter or reading letter after letter after letter can seem a little tedious, and I can understand how it would be difficult to get through. But it is unique, a unique way of telling a story.
You know, I commend him for that. But the monologues, man.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
The monologues. He puts Mike Flanagan to shame when it comes to monologues.
I'm like, is he being paid by the word? And I looked it up. No, he got royalties for it. I'm like, you could have said the same thing in like 2 sentences.
I will say though, Dracula is still better than Frankenstein because that is a serious monologue of monologues.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've
100%.
we've already done Frankenstein, so we remember. Like Petridge Farms, we remember. Okay, so now it's the movie's turn, and we are specifically talking about Coppola's 1992 version of Dracula. So we have Gary Oldman as Dracula. We've got Keanu Reeves as Mr. Harker. We have Winona as Mina. We have Tom Waits as the fun Renfield. He actually did a really good job as Renfield. And then, of course, we have the great Sir Anthony Hopkins as Dr. Van Helsing. So, what are our thoughts on this film? Does this Dracula have that same level of quality that we've come to love? What are your favorite parts about the movie? What did you not like about the movie? Lisa, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Okay, I will say this is definitely one of the best representations of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I really love that Gary Oldman was Dracula. That's one of my favorite things. He just, even when he's young, it's like, oh my God, come here. Just saying, I think he's pretty hot. But anyway, and I think, and then Anthony Hopkins was the best Van Helsing. I love Tom Waits as Renfield. He did a good job. The whole feeling of that era was perfect. The costumings, everything. It had a nice flow to it. I really did like all of it. I liked the part where Lucy was in the garden and the beast got her. I mean, it was kind of erotic, but it still functioned to what it was. I think it represents it very well.
Yeah. Karen, how about you? What were your thoughts on the movie?
Well, I enjoyed like the movie because it's you have like all these different actors that came in. I mean, you had like, Gary
Oldman.
No, it's Carrie. Sorry,
Carrie Ellis. Carrie Ellis.
Yeah, as author, and then one of my favorite actors, English actors, also is Richard E. Grant. He actually played like if y'all don't know him, if y'all watched Loki the series, he played old school Loki. Okay. He's amazing. But I thoroughly enjoyed it as a child, not knowing what it was about. As a kid, you don't know. Watching it, you shouldn't be watching it. When I was my age, but my mom didn't care. But I love the mystery of it. Now, my favorite thing about it really is the practical effects. Because I was as a young kid, you're like, how did they do? How did they make that? I want to do that, And also I loved the brides. The 3 brides, they were so beautiful.
Right.
It made me question a lot of things about myself.
That's fair. Beth, how about you?
I have a confession to make. I never saw this movie until a few days ago in preparation for this podcast. I just never saw it when it originally came out in the 90s. And so I have to wonder if I had seen it back then, if I would feel differently about the movie than I do now, having just now seen it, 30 plus years after it came out. The movie to me never quite figured out what it wanted to be, because I felt like on the one hand, you have the horror material of Dracula being this monster and they're trying to figure out how to stop him from victimizing people like Lucy and Mina. But on the other hand, it wanted to be this tragic, dark romance. And that first few minutes of the story, I've never heard an origin story like that for a vampire, especially not for Dracula, where it was because he was this crusader, and when his love died, he turned against God and wound up becoming a vampire. And if there was an entire 2-hour movie just dealing with that theme and the whole reincarnated love thing, I would be all in to watch that movie. If there is a movie that is just dealing with Dracula as a horror aspect, I am all in for that movie. But I felt like this movie was both. And so it was never quite romantic enough for me. It was never quite scary enough for me. So I think I'm an unpopular opinion. I think most people really love this movie. And I was a little more like, what's going on here?
That's fair. That's fair. I love this movie. Personally, I am a fan of Coppola's films. I love the way that he shoots things, and I think he did a fantastic job. I think sticking to a lot of the main themes that were in the book as an adaptation, he did great. And I think the movie in itself does have like a good story. You see this creature that ended up coming from a broken heart, but then you see young love, and then you see people who are pining after somebody, and they lose that. And so you get to see things that actually are scary and horrifying to us in everyday life, along with this monster that is Dracula. And I can't think of too many people who don't see young Dracula, Gary Oldman, and go, he's gorgeous, especially in that time period. That's an aesthetic. I know poor Mark Maddox and Mike Faber, when we did our Dracula episode, us ladies were just like, Gary Oldman as Dracula. He was so cute.
They were like, oh my God.
They're super sexy.
They're like, can we not talk about that anymore? And we're like, no. We're going to keep talking about how handsome he was. But honestly, like, the movie is just amazing. And personally,
I mean, come on.
Right. But there's so many people in this film that I love. Like, I named the cast. They're amazing. Carrie Ellis is amazing. I personally am a huge Tom Waits fan. So when I realized that was Tom Waits, I was like, this is awesome. Like, and I'm sitting here going, he's fantastic in this film. He's a great actor in this. Like, he really played the role of a crazy man, which I know he's not completely sane anyways. However, like, it was really well. And of course, you can't help but love Winona and Keanu. They're absolutely adorable. People will say, like, this is Keanu's, like, worst role that he's ever been in, and that he sucked in this. Yes, his English accent wasn't the best. However, it wasn't horrible. It didn't take away from the movie. Get over it. But Coppola did a really good job filming it. And it showed the depravity of some of these, like, vampiric yearnings, but then at the same time, the wholesomeness of being true to one's conviction. So, I don't know. I enjoyed the film. It's something that I watch frequently.
I mean, I would say, I loved Keanu's performance. Yeah, his English was not that great, but I did not like him doing a Shakespearean film with Denzel Washington. Okay, that hurt my soul. Much ado about nothing. Yeah. I was like, Keanu, no.
But let's go ahead. Let's kind of dive into now the comparison of the book and the movie, which I know we're all like itching to do. First and foremost, let's just kind of talk about Dracula himself. Dracula is portrayed differently in the novel and in Coppola's film. There are some distinct differences. There's a lot of similarities, but there are differences. Do you prefer this enigmatic and monstrous kind of Dracula, the book, or do you kind of like the more romantic and tragic version that was in the movie? Why and why not? Karen, you get to go first.
Monster. The fact that he came back alive through sheer force of will. Like, I died on the battlefield and then came back. Damn it, I'm not dying. That's like badass.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
It says a lot about that person. He's like, I have this will to survive. I'm going to survive. I'm going to live. And then you have the whole tragic version who turned away from God and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, you're kind of tragic, but you're Gary Oldman, so love you. But I like the book version. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's fair. Beth, how about you?
I enjoy the fact that Gary Oldman's Dracula is such a layered character. Because in the book, Dracula is just, he's the bad guy. He's evil, pure and simple. That's it. Yeah. And I love a good layered villain. And so I appreciate the fact that he has experienced heartbreak and he is in some ways a very sad, almost pitiable character because of the things that he's been through and the loneliness that he feels. And I do appreciate the fact that they make him alluring, because then you get into that you can get into that discussion of sometimes evil looks really good. Oh, yeah. It looks really sexy. It looks like Gary Oldman wearing purple glasses. And so you get into that. Well, it's evil doesn't always present itself as evil, and you have to learn how to discern and not be tempted by it. And so I really appreciate that the movie delved into some of that layered morality. So I thought that was nicely done.
Yeah. Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, I give kudos to the Bram Stoker's version. I mean, I really, kind of pure evil and everything, but I do agree with Beth. I kind of liked the whole Francis Ford Coppola version where you have the layers and why he's evil and why he turned to be the way. And she's right. Sometimes evil is beautiful and you never know how you're going to fight it because you're so entranced by it. So I feel like I kind of like Gary Oldman's Dracula a little bit better because he had layers and you could feel sorry for him, but you're like, he can get you without you realizing, and then it's too late. So, whereas the other one's just evil, and it's like, oh, this is evil, end of story. Don't get me wrong. He was pretty cool and he had the will to survive, but I have to say, I like the Gary Oldman Dracula better.
Yeah,
he was the survivor.
I think they're just two very different characters that you can't really compare them too much, to be honest. The one is pure evil, and I don't want to say one note because the character in the book is not one note. Like you can see that there is desire, but then you can also see that there is a fight in there. But at the same time, Gary Oldman's portrayal of Dracula shows that Dracula never lost his humanity. And even though this was centuries that he has been this lifeblood destroying, consuming creature, humanity was still alive in him. And so I think that's interesting, but then it takes away from the fear aspect. But I love when he is in these other forms. Like it's when he's only in his human form that you can really see that. But once he's in his other forms, be it the bat-like creature or the beast type creature, you can see what the monster actually is versus this light human tendency that he has when he's in his human form. And even when he was like the decrepit old man, you saw that he was a monster. So I think it's just interesting. It's like once he's like the younger version is when you see his humanity come back.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I was because as a vampire, he's been alive for like, 300, 400, 500 years or something like that. Yeah, at some point, you're going to lose your humanity. And then the fact that he's like younger and then has humanity, I was kind of like, no. But I still love you, Gary Oldman. Let me look at your beautiful face.
I would argue he only had humanity for Mina.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it was like all about love and reincarnation and stuff like that.
But I mean that once you have humanity for one thing, it can grow. Like a lot of people talk about how like evil consumes, so does good. So like the fact that he went 500 centuries or 500 years without having any like real humanity left in him, to then suddenly see that one thing that brought humanity back to him, said he had the potential to fix things if major if things could go correctly with Mina and regaining his humanity. But of course he's supposed to be the monster, so yes, he had to die. Yes, he had to stay bad. But I think that having that sparky humanity, did its thing. if that makes sense. Now, Mina and Lucy, these sweet young girls. So silly, so innocent. Maybe? I don't know. Lucy doesn't give me innocent vibes, but they play pivotal roles in both the book and the films. How do their characterizations and relationship differ between the two for you guys? And how do you think these differences shape the overall narrative for each one? Beth, do you want to start?
Sure. I feel like in the book, Lucy is a lot less of a rambunctious flirt than she is in the movie. I think she's not really celebrating the fact that she has all of these men who want to marry her. She's just a little overwhelmed by it, if anything. So I thought they really made her character in the film more kind of a stereotype, sort of this vapid rich girl who's having fun flirting with all the men. But I want to say her outfits, oh my goodness, I want that pearl choker with all the strands that she was wearing when they buried her. I would really like one of those in my life. But I did appreciate the way the movie reflected the book relationship between Lucy and Mina, where Mina came from a lot less money and was used to having to kind of be a little, a little dialed back in terms of the social life and the nice clothes and things, whereas Lucy had everything. And they even explicitly talk about it in the movie, that Lucy's the rich one with all the money and all the privilege. So I appreciate that they talked about that. I think my only complaint about the way they portrayed Mina in the film is that I had a difficult time understanding whether she loved Jonathan, but also loved the Count, or if she loved Jonathan but was sort of mesmerized by the Count to love him. And I don't think that was ever explained to my satisfaction, because I was like, well, is she in love with both of them and can't decide? Or are we supposed to be witnessing his power over her to make her attracted to him? And I wish that could have been explored a little bit more. And that goes back to, if it had been just a tragic, dark romance film, we could have gotten into some really interesting stuff.
Yeah. I thought they were in a Boston marriage at first. And then I realized, oh no, they like men. Okay. In the book, I was like, oh, they're actually like a couple. No, they're just really good friends. Okay, Karen. But I love the fact that these two women are different from each other, because yes, Lucy was kind of like the rich girl, but she didn't look down on Mina because they were best friends. The fact in the book she was really overwhelmed, but at the same time I'm like, I wish I was her. I had her life to get men to be it's kind of like she is the rich girl that has everything, you could tell, and she you're like, ugh, I want the book Lucy. But their relationship is the relationship I have with my female friends, and I think every female women should have female friends like that they have a confidant, they build each other up, they talk about their secrets and whatnot. Lucy and her outfits, man. Lucy in the sky with diamonds. I mean, that's all I have to say. Her funeral dress, that white dress, can somebody make that for me?
Right? Yeah.
I mean, we could go into Dragon Con with all the beautiful white dresses. But Mina in the book, she is a strong, capable woman, and her love for Jonathan Harker. Wow. If I ever heard from a dude in like a month, I'd be like, well, he ghosted me. But she was hanging on. And in the movie, I was like, either you're in love with Jonathan or you're not in love with Jonathan. I know you could be like, you have a crush on somebody, but I know it's Gary Oldman. But still, I mean, if I was in that position, I would go with, the vampire, because
it's Gary Oldman.
Yeah. And he has money. And he has money. I mean, but Beth, right? You don't know if he mesmerized her or if it was true feelings on her behalf.
Yeah, Lisa.
Yeah, I really like the way they portrayed the women a little bit better in the book. Mina being the strong, independent type of woman, but who's still in love with Jonathan Harker. Like Karen said, if I hadn't heard from a guy in like a month, I'd be like, oh, fuck it, And I don't have time for that, but that's the Sagittarius in me. Anyway, but I think Lucy was very much more toned down in the book, and she was flirtatious, but she was definitely more overwhelmed. And I love the relationship between her and Mina in the book, and how they just had like that confidant closeness and everything, and how intelligent, and how Mina turned into be the brave one that held everybody together, which I thought was pretty cool, even though she was going through hell with the whole Dracula and everything, but she still kind of held it together. In the movie, I think they made Lucy a little too flirtatious for the Victorian period, honestly, because even if you were a Victorian in the Victorian, you wouldn't be doing that. Even if she was rich and had all the money, there's certain etiquette. I do love all her costumes. I loved her red hair. My hair used to be that color before it started turning gray. I think she's not as much of a victim in the movie as she is the book. I think they sexualized Lucy too much. Mina, well, as far as I felt like she was a little wishy-washy when she ran into Gary Oldman. Of course, you hadn't heard from your guy in like a month. So yeah, here's this Gary Oldman. But I think I don't know if she was mesmerized or she was in love with him, but when they were in the movie theater with the Penny Arcade, whatever, and he spoke to her in Transylvania, I picked up that she got an aha moment and remembered just a little piece, and that's what entranced her. So I think she was not as strong in the movie as she was as in the book. I just don't think she was attached to Jonathan as much. And she probably could have gone either way.
Yeah. I mean, in the book, she learned how to do shorthand so she could help him.
Exactly.
That jazz. I was like, that's yeah. Do it to a lady.
Like an assistant teacher or something like that.
Yeah. Actually, both in the book and in the movie, she was a teacher, and she learned how to type, and she learned shorthand and all that stuff. So that way she could assist her husband. To me, I think the relationship between the two women in the book and in the movie is almost the same. There is this pure sisterly love for one another that it's like, this is my sister soulmate. Like, this is my person that we're going to be besties. In the book, they talk about sitting out on this bench in the cemetery. Like they would do that until they couldn't walk out to that bench anymore. Like that would be those two. And you get that in the movie as well, that these two, no matter what their circumstances are, they would be best friends.
I wonder if we have benches in my cemetery.
A lot of the ones in my area do.
Because now I want to walk through the cemetery.
We have a chair. We have a purple chair sitting in ours.
Yeah. But the way that the women were individually represented in each, completely different. Like you all have said already, Lucy was more afraid of the fact that she was getting all this attention from all these men. She wasn't sure of how she wanted to go about things. She was scared for her own well-being and very like, what is going on? We need answers. To then have her kind of be very wanton and very open in a way that just would not have been the case during that time frame. Even the way that she like flirted with the men just kind of, I don't know, it just didn't fit right for the character and the time being. It just kind of like sat weird. And to be perfectly honest, I hated that white dress. I thought it was horrendous. It looked like a big lace floof ball, and her hat, did not like that look. That was my least favorite of her looks. I know that's everybody's favorite, but I'll stand apart. I'll take the hot take on that one. But in the movie, I think they also discredited her as a character. I feel like in the book, she was more influential in the discovery of Dracula than she was in the movie. I felt like she was just a tool for Dracula to get close to Mina in the movie. And that wasn't really the case. Now, Mina, she was awesome in the book. She was this amazingly smart, strong woman who was passionate about her husband, who was passionate about ending this trauma, wanted to go after the creature that killed her best friend. She was all in. And the Mina in the movie, she didn't know what she wanted.
Wishy-washy.
She didn't know which way was up. And there were moments where you could see references to book Mina, but overall, she lacked a lot of the backbone. She lacked a lot of the gumption. And don't get me wrong, I love Winona, and I think she did a fantastic job playing Mina, but the way the character was written was not the Mina Harker that I love from the book. And I really didn't like the ending where it was she going after Dracula or Jonathan? For me personally, I think she was reincarnated and it was the soul remembering old romance. But to me, then it's like that completely discredits Mina's feelings for Jonathan prior to Dracula awaking her soul. And I don't know. I think that takes away from the whole reason they went above and beyond for this one character. Because in the book, the guys are all like, look, you're awesome. We'll do whatever we need to for you. We'll die for you. Quincy even said that multiple times. I got you. To my dying breath, I got you. And for her to kind of just not care in the movie, I don't know. It kind of was like a slap in the face to like everything she went through as a character from the book. And then, yeah, especially
she went through a lot in the book.
She did.
Yeah, she
did.
My
God, she did.
And you feel for her. And you're like, you know what? These men will protect her because she brought them together. She like wanted everything to be, back to normal, wanted her husband healed, wanted her friend to be healed, wanted to get that bastard who killed her friend. Mm-hmm. And then she goes through that whole trauma of, Renfield.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I really need an epilogue to the movie where she walks out of Dracula's castle and is like, okay, Jonathan, well, he's dead, so I guess you and I will be together now. Like, I really want to know how that conversation went afterwards. And I was very sad when I was like, oh, this is the end.
Right? So especially like in the book, her and Jonathan go on to have a kid and they name it after Quincy because of everything that Quincy did for them. They're like, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. So we got to name our kid after this guy. Like, where's that? That would have been nice in the movie. Like,
I would name all my kids after the friends.
Yeah.
It's like, that's Arthur, that's Jonathan, that's Quincy, that's Van Helsing. Why is his name Van Helsing? That's Lucy. Like, what's his name Van Helsing? Because I wanted it to be Van Helsing.
Right? Exactly. Like,
I'll be popping that baby.
Exactly. And especially like how they don't even like go into the fact that Harker ends up taking on the lawyer office, becomes a partner, and then like inherits it from his boss. And then, so him and Mina are now rich. So it's like when these dudes like, you guys missed all this stuff that like made Mina a badass. Come on. WTF.
We need a sequel.
Right? Like, and I hate sequels. I am not a sequels fan. It's like if you can't get the story done in one fell swoop.
If they do remake Dracula, I think Robert Eggers or Mike Flanagan will be better at making the literary remake.
I'm gonna say Mike.
I say Mike Flanagan.
Yeah. Not because I don't think Eggers would do a fantastic job, because he actually would. Oh, however, it would basically be Nosferatu 2.2. Like, or it's the same story essentially. Yeah. So it'd be weird. But Flanagan?
Oh yeah, I'd like to see Flanagan do it.
I love me some Flanagan. Coppola's film, though, it does introduce the tragic love story between Dracula and Mina, tied to the reincarnation and eternal love, air quotes, love. How does this romantic twist alter the tone compared to the Gothic horror focus of the novel?
I'm going to argue that it almost made it more Gothic horror.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking specifically of even movies like Crimson Peak, which I think is a phenomenal example of Gothic horror, where the heroine does fall in love with this guy who seems, when she first meets him, to be incredible and wonderful, but of course is hiding a dark secret. And I think that is one of the tropiest of the tropes for that genre. That's why we always wind up with women running away from houses in their nightgowns when they find out that dark secret. So I think it actually added to the Gothic sense of it to have that sort of doomed love story line in there.
Okay.
I would agree. I think it definitely made it more Gothic-y in nature. The doomed love story, the more romantic. I think it turned it away from more of a, I mean, it's a horror, but I think it's more of a gothic horror and romance than it is an actual horror. Gary Oldman.
Well,
like
for me,
I already have a title for this episode, but I feel like it's gonna end up turning into hashtag we love Gary Oldman.
I support that.
I support that too.
Karen, how about you?
I mean, it for me, if the romance kind of made it more into a dark fantasy romance, yeah, it has like the horror element to it. But for me, the book with the love story between Jonathan and Mina and the men going to like, protect her from Dracula, that was more of that gothic romance for me because of the fact that if we do not save this girl, she will die like Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to put our lives on the line for her. Love that one. So yeah, I prefer that story than the whole reincarnated love, lost soul, soulmate, blah 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 blah.
I kind of agree with you, Karen. I think if you're comparing the book and the movie, I I don't think that added tragic love story added and increased the tone or worked with the film at all. I think it kind of took away a little bit because, like you said, like the love story between Mina and Jonathan and the way that Arthur loved Lucy so much, and even the other men loved Lucy so much that they saw what was happening to Mina and said, "We love this woman who died. You're going to die the same way. We're going to do everything in our power to prevent that." I think that is more of like a tragic gothic kind of feel than Gary and Winona's kind of tale. I think because of that dynamic that they added in the film, it did kind of take away from a lot of the elements that I loved in the book. So I kind of like, like, could we not have done that? Like, I'm okay. Like, I was kind of okay with like them adding his wife died because she thought he died in the battlefield and he cursed God. Like, I'm okay with that, like that whole backstory. But what I was not okay was how they made Mina that reincarnated soul. Like, I wanted her to still be like the Mina in the book, where she was madly in love with Jonathan, would have done anything for him, and said, "Deuce, Dracula, it's your time to go." Like, I would have wanted that. So even though Dracula, saw his reincarnated wife, it wasn't actually his reincarnated wife. It was Mina, which is a completely different character. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Hold it. It made sense to me.
So now let's kind of get into the landscape. There's a lot of eerie landscape going on with this film, or with the film, and with the book. I think Bram did a decent job kind of setting a picture for us all. You have Transylvania, you have Victorian England, you have which are like the centers of both, but you have the asylums and you have abandoned abbeys, creepy old castles in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. You get all this kind of stuff. How do Stroker's descriptive prose, as well as Coppola's gothic visuals, compare in telling you about Dracula's world? And which one did you think did a better job?
Honestly, I think Stoker did a better job. As pretty as the movie is, I felt like I was in the carriage when he was going. I felt like I was in the castle. I felt everything felt like either you were being suffocated by this atmosphere, or you were, in the Victorian, richness of England. I really think Stoker did a better job. I mean, the movie was great. The sets were good. I liked the garden where they were in. I just feel like they could have done a little bit more. It felt too studio for me. I know it's a movie, but it felt a little too, okay. If they had made it a little edgier, it might have been better. It just felt polished for me. Beautiful sets, just too polished for the atmosphere.
That's fair.
I mean, reading the book and watching the movie is two different things. Like in the book, you get that sense of being there, sense of, the fear of crawling down a wall, which I'll probably never do. I'll just gonna have to die like on that floor. And then, you're at the seaside, you can smell the sea air and feel the breeze and whatnot. And I actually like the landscape that, Stoker does in describing it because, for someone who hasn't been to some of these areas, it gave me a good visual, mind's eye visual of what these places look like and, seeing the different people there. But Francis Ford Coppola, yeah, it is a movie. It is going to be a bit polished, but in a way, you got to see his vision of what these landscapes are. And the scenes when, he's in the street just walking in the daylight with the people jostling around him, that I got a little bit claustrophobic with that because I'm like, that's just too many people. But I love the both of them. I mean, I can't really, if I had to choose, I would have to choose the book version because I like to, because people have different ideas what their landscape's going to look like. I mean, my landscape's going to be different from Lisa. It's going to be different from Shannon. It's going to be different from Beth. So I just like, the book version.
Yeah. I think both of them did a fantastic job creating an environment for you to experience the story in. Now, with that being said, you guys are right. Coppola made it pretty. Absolutely pretty. But it didn't take away from the fact that you were in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, Transylvania. It didn't take away from the isolation that you felt on that carriage ride to his castle. It didn't take away from being inside that insane asylum and being unnerved by everything that was going around. I mean, even the garden scene, like being Mina, walking in and seeing your best friend laid out while this beast ravaged her. Like, you were there, you could feel it. But the book, you got to use your imagination more. And we like using our imagination here. So it makes sense for a lot of us to be like,
imagination.
Imagination.
And I think we have to consider the age of the film too.
Yeah.
Because special effects have come a long way since 1992.
Oh, yeah.
And in the book, reading about Dracula crawling down the wall of the castle is super creepy.
Yeah.
Watching it in the movie with 1992 technology, all I could think was, I wonder if they made Gary Oldman do that himself or if they put a stuntman in for that scene. So I think we have to give the movie a little bit of grace with the scene setting and some of those situations where it is better in the imagination than it could possibly be in film.
Oh, yeah. Again, like you said, 92. I mean, you can even try to compare it to Robert Eggers' Nosferatu, which Nosferatu, for anybody who doesn't know, is a ripoff of Dracula. The whole thing. I mean, there was a lawsuit. It lost the lawsuit. But Eggers' story, like, you can see the difference, but you can also see the difference in time, money, technology, advancements in practical effects, all that Coppola did not have. So, yeah, it's one of those, you can see the difference. Beth, what else did you like about, like, the comparison between the two?
I think the book, those descriptions read like a really good travelogue a lot of times, but that was also necessary in that time period because people didn't have Google. They couldn't just go online and what does it look like when there's a ruined castle in Transylvania? But we all know because we've seen documentaries or we've seen photos. And so I think, the movie, the sets were beautiful. I think they did a great job. I really love the interior of Dracula's castle, especially with the time-worn look with the cobwebs everywhere and everything was a little bit crumbling. So I thought they did a perfectly fine job with translating that to the screen, except for, like I said, when it came to some of those practical effects that just haven't aged so well. But again, we have to remember the time period for that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. The novel, kind of already talked about it, uses a lot of letters and journal entries. And while the film uses a lot of that as well, it also employs a more straightforward cinematic approach. Which storytelling do you think actually captures the suspense and atmosphere of the Dracula tale?
I do appreciate the way the film gives a nod to that by we see Mina at the typewriter, we see Jonathan doing his diary entry. So I appreciate that they were true to that in that sense, but certainly an entire movie told that way is just not going to be practical.
Yeah.
And I think one of the nice things about not being confined to that sort of storytelling is that we were able to see some of Dracula's backstory, or we were able to be alone with him, and see his thoughts, because obviously if it has to be somebody relating a story, there would have been nobody there to witness some of those moments with him. So I think they found the right balance, I think, for that storytelling device.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I agree with Beth on that one, because reading it made my mind disjointed. And listening to it, I had to like piece together what was going, like, okay, so this happened here, and then this happened here, and then this happened here, and then finally they all get together, and Mina puts that down the timeline. Why couldn't he just put down the timeline in the beginning? Why didn't Stoker do that? Because I had to remember what happened on the 19th of this day, because something else had happened on the 19th that day. So the movie had a better balance for me. With the whole letters and whatnot.
No, it makes sense.
I wish Stoker would have done the same thing. Like, hey, we're going to do it in chronological order, so you won't forget.
There you go.
Because you already had like a letter from Mina to Lucy and telegraph from such and such to such and such, journal entry this day. I mean, you could have done all on one day. I could have saw it. I've been happy.
Yeah. Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, my ADHD did kind of get the best of me when I was trying to listen to it.
Yeah.
I do think the movie did a good balance, combining some of the letter journal entries, and then you saw some of the newspapers of the Demeter, where it showed the little newspaper boy. But I kind of like the flow of the story in the movie a little bit better, because I love letter writing. I like listening to that kind of stuff, but it was kind of a little bit all over the place for me to remember. But it was still good. I still enjoyed it, but it was just a little scattered for me.
Yeah, Bram is amazing when it comes to his writing, and I think the device of journal entries, news, and letters, and all that kind of stuff. I think that is a very fantastic way of telling a story, but it was a little hip hoppy where you talked about all these things, and you kind of go back and there was that chronological miss. If you weren't fully focused on what you were consuming, you could get confused very easily. Versus the movie, which I think did a fantastic job with making the journal entries and the letters almost romantic. It was very, very Gothic, I think, in the way that they told that story. And it was very much, hey, here you go. Here's what's going on. And it helps set the timeline. Like, you knew, okay, started here on this day, and then, the movie ends on October 31st. Like, you can see the build up to that. And the way that they narrated the letters was kind of cool. I enjoyed it. I would say neither took away from the suspense and the atmosphere of the story, but I do think on a consumption basis, the movie hit a wider audience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I'm like sitting here reading or listening to it. Like, they had a news article where the wolf went missing from the zoo, and then on this day, and then several days later, here's the wolf. But I was like, wait a minute, what's going on?
Yeah. Now we're going to kind of start winding down. Both the novel and the film have left lasting marks in history and pulp culture, with having over 100 different versions of Dracula out there, and that's including the Nosferatus. How do you think each has influenced the modern portrayals of vampires, as well as which version do you think, or do you believe, had a greater cultural impact on this story? Lisa?
Well, I will say that it has definitely made the more modern vampire more romantic in nature instead of scared of it.
The book or the movie?
Oh, the movie. Yeah, the movie definitely has made Dracula, the character, as well as vampires, more romantic, whereas like the book kind of kept it evil and villainous. So, and I think that the movie has more influence on the vampiric culture than the book does as of recently, because we have all these vampire movies and some humans always in love with the vampire. And I think like Lestat and all that, I think the movies had more influence on than the book has. I haven't seen any really good evil vampire movies as of lately, which is kind of sad to me.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like last evil vampire like story. I think it was 30 Nights or 30 Nights.
Oh yeah, 30 nights.
30 days
30
and
days
nights.
and nights.
30 days and nights
30
or something like that.
I think that
Yeah,
was like
that
the
was the
last
last
time where
one.
you had like evil vampires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Karen, how about you?
For me, the Stoker did a fantastic job of bringing the vampire to the modern age, and I love him for that. Even though vampire is not my favorite, character, I still play a vampire for like White Wolf. I mean, I'm playing a vampire right now. I'm a neonate. But Francis Ford Coppola had this whole idea of sexualizing the vampire, making them love interests. And that works for some people because some people want to love the monster. Like how they have romances about were creatures and
Yeah.
being on were creatures. Uh, but each has their own impact on the culture where like I said, Stoker introduced the vampire. I mean, vampires have been around for a long time, but he kind of like introduced it to the mainstream where everyone's like, oh, and now I need to write a book about vampires, do movies about vampires. And somebody like stole his idea about vampires. That's why his state sued them. But eh. And then, like I said, you have Coppola's The Romance of Vampires, and this is something about romanticizing the monster that everyone loves. I don't understand it.
There's more and
really
more monsters being romanticized.
Even, the slasher movies I've seen. So I'm like,
yep.
Sometimes you just need somebody evil.
I mean,
and I wish there was like more the evil vampires.
I mean,
evil vampires that don't care.
Have you seen the ghost face trend that was going on TikTok there for a little while? Yeah.
There's a new app about, falling in love with serial killers, whatever.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Do not suggest doing that. Let's not cross that line. But Beth, how about you? What are your thoughts on this modern portrayals?
I agree with both Karen and Lisa because I think that, like Karen said, Dracula the novel is what really propelled the vampire into pop culture of the Victorian age. And it's really stayed with us ever since then. So all the movies and the other novels and things that have come out since then, I think we can really trace back to Dracula making the vampire popular. But the 1990s, we saw such a shift in how the vampire was perceived. And vampires were suddenly sexy. And I just did a quick Google, and Interview with a Vampire did not come out until 1994. So Dracula actually came before that, and I think really started that trend of the sexy vampire. And I mean, again, hashtag we love Gary Oldman. we love the charge there. So I think both of them have been very influential in their own way.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. I think they both left massive marks in different ways. I think Bram's novel opened a door for storytelling that hadn't really been opened before. I think he did a fantastic job introducing a combined folklore because the vampire lore that's in Dracula is kind of a mix between Irish vampiric lore as well as, I don't want to say Transylvanian, but like that kind of area's vampiric lore, which I think is great. But he did bring in that, hey, let's check this out. Let's do this. Let's create this story based off of the campfire stories that our grandparents used to tell us when we were little. And then you have that has grown, and you can see the evolution of horror literature from that time frame on. And you can see there's a lot of people who use the letter storytelling in the way that they write their novels, or they use the same kind of descriptive prose that Bram had, or coming off of folklore and writing stories based off of folklore and combining the folklore. But then you have Coppola's film, and there are references to that film in pop culture all over the place. Every time you turn around, like somebody could make a statement, and you're like, that was a Dracula quote. And so, like, that, and or even sexy Gary Oldman, like it's one of those things of like, we know, like it came from this movie that is what 31, 32. How old is it now?
33. 33?
33? Okay. So the movie's 33 years old. It's still being referenced. There are people who see it today for the first time, like you, Beth, and are like, okay, I can see why people watch this. Or like you, they're like, nah, I'm good, you know. But I mean, to have so many big names, and a lot of those individuals were also early in their careers. Keanu, Winona, Carrie were all early on in their careers in feature film. Winona had a little bit of a name because of the stuff that she'd been in with Tim Burton, but like those guys were not famous when this movie came out. I think Anthony Hopkins was the only one who really had like a
repertoire.
Who had a resume essentially. But this movie made differences that we can still see the ripples of today. And I think that the film and the book are things that should be treasured forever and be taught in a lot of classes and shown as here's the adaptation. I mean, the movie hit almost every big like plot thing that the book had. Might have done it a little different, but it hit almost all the same plots. So like it's interesting. And I think the fact that we will continuously have these like pop culture references that we go back to, even with like the book and like listen to the creatures of the night, like things like that, they're just going to live on forever. So let's do our final thought. And then what we would rate the book and what we would rate the movie. We're going to do our skull rating. So 1 to 5 skulls, because 1, they did do something and they worked hard, so they deserve a little credit. To 5, which means we loved it. It was out of this world. Beth, you get to start.
Oh, well, the novel for me gets 5 skulls. It's one of my favorite books. And I think the fact that it is still such an interesting discussion well over 100 years since it was published says a lot about its staying power. For the film, I'm going to give Gary Oldman gets his own skull. Anthony Hopkins gets a skull because he is probably my favorite portrayal of Van Helsing that I've ever seen. I loved how slightly unhinged he was.
Right.
And then I'm going to give them a skull for effort. So I'm giving it 3 skulls.
Okay. What do you think about the comparison like between the two?
I think that 100 years from now, the novel will still be discussed quite a lot. Mm-hmm. I think the movie will not be as hot a topic of discussion. Okay. But I still think it has left its mark in the vampiric timeline that we have.
Okay. Lisa, how about you?
Okay. Let's see. For the book, reading it again, I'll give it a 3.5 skulls because, well, it was just too jumpy for me. Mm-hmm. But the atmosphere and the descriptions of what was going on was beautiful. So I'll give them a 3.5 skull. And I definitely recommend anybody to read it. You should at least read it. Mm-hmm. And the movie, I give it a 4.5 skulls because 1, Gary Oldman, of course, but 2, it's just a beautifully well done movie for a vampire movie. Mm-hmm. I like the story. I like the sets. I love the practical effects. The practical effects were very good for the timeline. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and as far as like comparison, the book will still be standing even 100 years after this. The movie, I think it'll still be standing because in pop culture so much, and it's going to be there for a little bit at least, another 50 years or so.
Yeah. Karen, how about you?
I mean, reading the book for me, it was like 2.5. Okay, because my brain could not do it. Audiobook, I have to give that a 5. Okay. Because I like the voice actors, they're trying to do the different voices, and it's really funny listening to them do the Western voice. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, trying to do the Western voice there. It's hilarious, cute. So I recommend because listening to reminds you of a radio show.
Yeah,
So yeah, I like radio shows, podcasts. For the movie, I mean, I enjoyed the movie for what it is. They could have changed some things. They could have added some things. They could have switched out actors. But, for the time, 92, They did a good job. Francis Ford Coppola did a good job. So I have to give that a 4.5.
Okay.
I mean, I love the practical effects that he used. Gary Oldman, Keanu Reeves, all these great actors that they had. So it's a 4.5.
Yeah. I'm going to give the book a 4, and I'm going to give the movie a 5. The book, because of my neurospiciness, I get distracted sometimes when reading it or even listening to it. And it's not that it is not good. It just hearing the tediousness of each letter, each news story, each journal entry can get a little monotonous and tedious. And it makes my brain want to shut off. And so I understand that, but it is beautifully written. And when I'm able to focus, love it. Absolutely love it. And the movie, were there things about the movie that I didn't like? Yeah, of course. But I think it was an extremely well done story. I think Coppola really did encompass a lot of the heart that was in the book and even created something new from it that created a whole other plane of storytelling. And it was just gorgeous. Like, it was a beautifully shot film. The practical effects were pretty great. And, you can't not love watching it. Even if you don't like the story, it's pretty to watch. So
it is pretty. It is.
So
pretty.
that's my thoughts. So our lovely little ghouls, which do you prefer? Do you prefer the book? Or do you prefer the movie? So come tell us on our social media. You can find us on all the things: Instagram, TikTok, X, Threads, Blue Sky, and our Facebook group. So come check it out. Come join us. I'd love chit-chatting with you all about these things. You can also find us wherever you listen to podcasts, like Apple, Google, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. Drop those comments. We message back. Check that out. So, ladies, where can they all find you? Beth, where can they find you? What fun things do you have going on?
Well, the 10th and final book in my Nightmare Arizona Paranormal Cozy Mysteries is going to be coming out soon. And if you like your spooky more on the level of Scooby-Doo and Bunnicula, in other words, not too scary, you can find me and my books online at bethdolgner.com.
Awesome. That's exciting. Lisa, where can they find you?
Oh, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and that's pretty much it right now.
Rock on. Karen?
Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, formerly known as Twitter, TikTok, and Reddit.
Rock on. I am Shannon. You can find me on all the things at Spill Tea Wine Media Mind. And before we go, Beth, thank you so much for coming on. We always love having you on.
I love being on this podcast with you ladies. It's always a good time.
Yay.
Yay.
And our lovely little ghouls, thank you. We really do appreciate your support, and every like, share means the world to us. So thank you so much. Stay spooky.
And this has been the Spooky and Kooky podcast of Earth Station Boo.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.